Today's marked the third day of military actions near Taiwan. And we hope it's the last of their actions. But we have seen fighter jets, we've seen Navy ships, we've seen an aircraft carrier near the island, all in retaliation for the recent visit to the United States by Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen. Some have actually speculated that these actions were also meant to show that the U.S. leadership cannot be trusted to protect the vulnerable island should China choose to invade it. Well, how should U.S. leadership respond? Joining me now to discuss this and more is U.S. Representative Tim Burchett. He serves on the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability and also the Committee on Foreign Affairs and the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. He represents the 2nd Congressional District of Tennessee. Congressman Burchett, welcome back to the program. Good to see you.
Great seeing you, brother. Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, you bet. Let's see. You serve on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, which obviously has been tracking this issue very closely. So, first of all, Congressman, give me your reaction to the Chinese Communist Party's show of force these past few days. It's concerning.
Well, I think it has a lot to do with our recent actions on that balloon. I've come to believe that maybe the information gathering was secondary to just gauging our response. As you know from your service in Congress, the Chinese, they're generally playing chess when the rest of the world is playing checkers, and we generally do a poor job in the checkers department. You know, they were allowed to transverse our entire country. Even former head of the CIA under Obama and his former chief of staff, Leon Panetta, said that he would have dropped that balloon when it crossed the Aleutian Islands. And it was allowed to transverse our entire country. It was allowed to move backwards and forwards and basically spy on our country. And then they were able to gauge what our attempts were at whatever it's stopping it, which basically was strong disapproval, and then shooting it down once it had already crossed our entire country. I think we've, at some point, our leadership has been co-opted by the Communist Chinese, whether that's through business dealings or espionage or other ways. They've completely infiltrated this country with our education system, our debt, our military. They've even reached their tentacles into our White House. So I think that we know they are up to no good, and I'm not sure where we go with this. To be honest with you, everybody's rattling the sabers, but do we want to get into a world war? And would we be able to maintain that in a nuclear conflict? So at some point, under President Trump, we had it was kind of a détente kind of situation, as you well know. We were powerful. They feared us. They weren't going to mess with us economically or otherwise. Now, I think you're going to see them push the envelope.
Yeah, I think you bring up an excellent point. Everyone there, the Chinese are playing chess while everyone is playing checkers. I think that's an excellent word picture with all of this. And as we all know, everything rises or falls on leadership. And that is the issue that we are now facing. And you yourself, I saw where you described this as the United States is now in a very awkward position as it relates to China because poor decisions in the past. And now we find ourselves with some extremely serious potential decisions in front of us. So is there, how should the Biden administration respond to this at this point?
Well, I think we ought to draw the gauntlet down on the economic situation. I think we've allowed them into buy farmland in our country. I think that's an easy fix right there. This president is very fond of executive orders. I think that would be the first thing I would do was start putting the clamp down on their business situation, make them feel that kind of pain early on. I think military is our last. There's no turning back from that, as you well know. And they are a nuclear superpower, unlike Russia, where we basically we've thrown $114 billion unchecked dollars at Ukraine, and we'll see where that ends up. So I think we're we're sort of at a standstill, really. We're going to put some troops over there. We're going to rattle the sabers, but they pretty much have the whole island of Taiwan surrounded. After the Second World War, my father fought in the Pacific, the Marine Corps, all the way across in the Pacific, and then went to China after the war to fight the communists for a short period of time. And yet the Chinese communists were taking over, and we basically allowed them to do that by turning away our armaments. And instead of arming Chiang Kai-shek, who ended up going to Taiwan, we ended up throwing a lot of our armament, tanks, weapons, everything in the sea, literally. And so I think we've got a clear message we've sent to these folks that we can talk all we want, we could rattle sabers, but the proof is going to have to be: are we willing to put men out down there?
Absolutely.
I think I hate to say that, and that's kind of the bottom line on the thing, but are we willing to do that? And I'm not at this point. I don't know that would bear any fruit at all.
Well, I'm convinced the Chinese are not going to slow down with rattling their saber, and they may be just wild enough to actually use it. But at the same time, French President Emmanuel Macron recently said that the European nations should not become entangled on either side of this, the American side or the Chinese, when it comes to these differences. It's stunning to me that he would make such a comment. Do you think he could end up regretting such strategic, not only ambiguity, but just he's in a different planet on all of this?
Yeah, I would hope so. But, the French have had a history of that, and we've bailed them out of 2 world wars, actually. My uncle is buried in France, where he died a few days after D-Day. So I'm well aware of the sacrifices that Americans have made for the French, and I'm not aware of too many sacrifices they've made for us. I think that is what's happened in this world today. We've given away so much with very little contractual agreements, and yet we've always said if someone were to attack them, it's just like attacking us. And now they see as us getting in the middle of something, they're backing off. I think you should look at Ukraine as well. I mean, dadgum, how much more money are we going to pump over there in a European conflict? And then we're not seeing the Europeans give a commensurate amount I remember when it first started, as you do, I think Estonia was the number 2 contributing country. And I dare say most folks could find Estonia on a globe. And but yet Europe seems to have kind of backed off this thing in the beginning until we got into it, and then they followed suit. So, I don't know what to tell you. I guess I'm a hawk.
Congressman, we're going to have to leave it there. But listen, you bring up some excellent points, and listen, thank you for your leadership on this and so many other issues. We're extremely grateful for that.
Thank you, brother.
Keep it up. Thank you for joining us this evening on Washington Watch.